Welcome to Mom's Writers Club. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Sarah.
Today we are going to talk about the call, which I'm really excited to talk about.
Me too.
Okay.
So there's an agent who had requested your full and they really liked it. And they send you an email and you look at your email and you're like, oh, it's going to be another rejection. I know it's going to be another rejection.
That is
And you look
exactly
at the
what
top and you look and you get that little snippet in your email inbox and it's like, and you look at it and you're like,
that doesn't look like a rejection.
that looks like a weird rejection.
Mine had the word, I just finished devouring your book.
Oh yeah. So you knew that was good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think mine was something like, thank you for sending us
And that totally looks like a
Johanna the
rejection.
Third and or whatever. It was, or thank you. I enjoyed reading. It was something like that. It was something like I enjoyed reading. It was something kind of not obvious.
Yeah, I
And
got
then you click on it and you actually read the email and then
your heart stops basically.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the email and my whole body like started vibrating and I had to like reread it 3 times to make sure that's what it said, that they were requesting a call.
Yeah.
And then I started sobbing, totally burst into tears.
Oh. I texted Jess. I ran in
Okay.
and told my husband. And I'm like, so Jess and I have these different coping mechanisms for rejection and just for this whole process. And we talked about this at one point before. And mine has always been odds are super long. I totally don't expect this to happen. I'm just going into this. I'm going to do all the things, but I'm not going to get my hopes up because like the odds are just super long. And Jess has always felt like,
It is going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to keep writing books. I'm going to keep querying. It's going to happen.
and that it's gonna happen. So I looked at mine and I was like, huh. The agent was requesting to talk to me on the phone, but she said, I'm not so sure about the ending, but I really love this, that, and the other. And it was worded in such a way that I was like, this is not like she's not in love.
But I
So
think that's normal. Like I couldn't
yes,
tell 100% for sure if it was going to be an offer either. And sometimes it's not an offer. Sometimes they want to request an R&R. I've even
just
heard
a
of this.
revise and resubmit.
And sometimes they just want to get to know you a little bit or find out more about your book and then think about offering. So I would say when you get that email requesting that call, get super excited because it's super exciting. But just also, I have heard that most people who are going to request an R&R will say so or in some other way, like indicate it so you don't think it's an offer call. But I have also heard that is not always the case. But it's almost always an offer call. But just no, not 100% of the time. Usually you don't get to talk to them right away. For me, it was a long holiday weekend and I like replied, great, I'm so excited to chat with you. And I gave her my availability for the following week. And she didn't reply for almost 24 hours because she like had things to do. And I think I had to wait like 4 or 5 days. And those 4 or 5 days are so hard because like you're pretty sure it's going to be an offer, but what if it's not, and you can't really do anything yet because you don't know if it is. So mostly you just text your friends. Like I just texted Sarah constantly about how excited and scared I was.
Yeah, it's torture because it doesn't take 4 or 5 days to prepare for the call. It takes like a couple of hours, and then the rest of the time you're just overthinking.
Yeah.
And it's
But
really so and this is where we come across the shocking realization that you are not their absolutely number one priority at all times, which is really hard to take. It should be like they send you the email and they want to talk to you like tomorrow night, and then every concern of yours is first on their list and everything.
yeah.
But I'm just kidding. I mean, it's just not, and you come up against that right away.
So there are a few agents out there who will still just call you out of the blue.
Yeah.
Most of the time you'll get an email that just, it can happen. It does happen. So you've gotten the call. Sarah, what did you do in the days leading up to the call to prepare for the call? Because that is absolutely the next thing you should do when an agent emails that they want to chat with you.
Right, is get prepared. I read all the blog posts and I watched all the YouTube videos about what to do and what kind of questions to expect and what kind of questions to ask. And actually, they were mostly what kind of questions to ask
Yeah.
the agent. And so I was kind of like all prepared with that.
Yeah, totally. Same thing for me. I really liked watching YouTube videos about it, which is one of the reasons we wanted to make one. I read all the blog posts. If you just do a Google search for like questions to ask literary agents on the call, you will find tons of lists. So we're not going to go into detail on all the questions you can ask.
What are sort of the highlights, like the top questions that that
Totally.
you're talking about that you
I
want?
want to know. I want to know why the agent is offering representation. I want to know what she likes about my book. I want to know what revisions that person has in mind and how big they think that those revisions are. Like, is it going to be, something that's going to take a week or something that is a complete rewrite? Because that's the huge difference. I
Mhm.
want to know how they run their business, how much they communicate, and how they like to communicate. I want to know what their other authors think of them, which is why you will ask for references, even if you have a great feeling about this agent. So I actually called one of my agent's clients, even though I'd already sent the email that I was accepting her offer, because I wanted to know, I wanted some feedback on how to best work with my agent. I wanted to know if she had any tips. Basically, I wanted to know more about how she worked. And I felt like that was really helpful to know. And then, I mean, you can ask more detailed questions. You can ask about what imprints they would want to submit to. You can ask about, where they see your book landing.
Mhm.
You can ask whatever you want. If I were you, I would take a look at those questions and see what is important to you. And so Alexa Dunn, and we'll link it below, she also has a video talking about the questions she recommends for the call, but she explains why, which I think is important, because a lot of these things, especially if you're really new to publishing, you don't know, like, well, what do you mean, what imprint? Like, what does that,
Yeah, like, why do I want to know that? Yeah.
yeah.
Why is
So
that important?
yeah, and then I also think it's important that you ask questions based on the research you did on that agent. So re-research any offering agent. And like, one agent that offered did not have much of a sales history. And I just wanted to know why. I didn't have a problem with it. She was a newer agent, but
Yeah.
I wanted to hear in her own words kind of where she was at with everything. And I
Yeah.
found that helpful in making my decision. Don't hesitate to ask questions like that, because I didn't think I'd get more than one offer. Most people do not get more than one offer, and that is normal. So if you only get one offer, don't feel like that's a bad thing. But when you do get more than one offer, having asked that question it's important, because that may help you make a choice. The other thing I will say is, if an agent doesn't answer a question, that may be a red flag.
Mhm.
Feel free to ask it again. I had one of the agents that offered did not answer one of the questions that I asked, and I thought that was really odd, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable. But I wouldn't recommend asking every single question on the list unless you absolutely want to. It quickly becomes kind of like monotonous, and it feels like you're interviewing the agent, which you kind of are. But
And you know
decide which
what?
ones are important to you.
Well, so what I found was that I had I actually printed this whole list. I think it was from Alexa Dunn's blog,
Mhm.
because she has a really comprehensive list and there's like 20 things on it. And she says herself, like, you are not going to like go through all 20 of these things, but it was a nice comprehensive thing. So I felt like I wasn't going to miss anything. And I found that all three of the agents I talked to knocked them off one by one,
So I actually
in the
had the
first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I had the complete opposite experience.
Really?
None of the agents answered most of the questions, and not in a bad way. So the first agent I spoke to basically wanted me to ask her questions I had. She did very little introduction. She told me why she liked my book, and then basically said, "Well, what questions do you have for me?" After telling me that she was going to offer. The second agent was not. She was a little bit late coming to the call, and it was during nap time, my daughter's nap time. So it felt kind of like a rushed call. It was a little uncomfortable, to be honest. So I found out very little bit about her. And then my third call, there was some of that, but there's definitely a lot of me asking those questions. But I don't know. I've heard that most agents will answer a lot of those questions just in their introduction. It's funny we had such different calls.
I know. Video versus audio call. What did you
Yeah,
do?
I just thought I'd mention it. So some agents will say, "Hey, do you want an audio call or a video call?" And some will just suggest one or the other. And you should do whatever you're comfortable with. When given the option, I did choose video. Um, I talked it out with my husband because I was, super nervous either way. And he suggested I do video because it's kind of like meeting that person for the first time.
Mhm.
And his opinion was, even if you only do this once and then in the future you talk on the phone, like, it's a good way to establish that relationship. That said, if you are not comfortable with a video call, then don't do it, because
Yeah.
it's going to affect your call. Do whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I did all three just phone calls.
So when you get on the phone with the agent, you
Click,
will,
click, boom, 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 boom.
yeah, yeah. Just remember they're another person. I know, way easier said than done. Be prepared, have all your questions there, have like a notepad to take notes on either during or right after, write all the things
Yeah.
down, because if you get
Yes.
another offer, it will help you. But also, like, even when you're just thinking about their offer, it's nice to be able to go back to that stuff.
And
Also,
even if you just write, and I took notes while I was talking, and they
mhm,
were super brief,
yeah,
like I thought they would make no sense later. But when I went back to my notes, I could really get a feel for my kind of like my emotional response to this call.
Yeah.
Like the things that I was writing down sort of like gave me a flavor and brought back like what the feeling was talking
Yeah.
to the person.
I also will say, like, if you get multiple offers, there's often a trend to like want to go with the most recent person you've talked to because like that's who you're
Recency
most
bias, yeah.
yeah, so just like keep that in mind. And also don't say yes to the agent on this call. Like even if they are your dream agent, if you still have queries and manuscripts out there, you owe it to those agents to at least give them the chance to offer. Some people may disagree with me on this, but I just think it's unprofessional to just straight up say no. The other thing is when you get to the point you're sending those emails out to agents who have your query or who have your manuscript, you may get more requests for fulls. I think I had 2 partials upgraded to fulls, and I think I had like 4 or 5 requests for fulls. And one of the agents that offered was someone who only had my query letter at the time I received that offer. So,
I think the agent who I signed with only had my query letter.
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
Yeah. So there you
requested the
go.
full like 3 days before my decision deadline.
I know that question comes up a lot, like, well, do I notify agents who have just my manuscript or also my query? And I say for sure the query, otherwise you're going to get people requesting who, you've already signed with an agent.
Yeah. And it's in your interest to put out an announcement to all the agents that you've queried, whether or not they've requested your manuscript, because that gives you a bigger pool and may give you more choices.
What did a typical call look like? Like, can you tell us the anatomy of the calls you had? Just like a quick overview.
Yeah. So between Jess and I, we've had the call 6 times, which is unusual.
Yeah.
But so we've been through this iteration a lot. So it was usually, hi, thanks for making time, a little bit of small talk. And then all 3 started out by telling me all the things they liked about my book, which is a great way to start a call because you suddenly get all this validation and it really puts you at ease and you just feel really good and you feel a little bit like you got a little bit of a sense that, or I did anyway, get a little bit of a sense that this agent is pitching to you, which is so weird after, you pitching to agents for however long it was while you were querying. And then they went into revisions. Some had more ideas for revisions than others. With all 3 of them, I got some version of the question, what are you writing next? And I was surprisingly underprepared for that, even given like all the preparation I had been doing. What am I writing next? Like, how do I answer that question?
I didn't get that question a single time.
You did it?
Like I was totally prepared to answer it. And I like already had another book finished. And I like had notes on it and like all my other ideas.
Oh
and I did not get that question from it. I mean, all 3 agents said they wanted to talk about it, like in the email they sent, but not one of them asked me on the call.
Oh yeah. All 3 of them asked me and wanted to talk about like, what have you got queued up next?
I love how we are kind of showing how different the calls can be because you kind of like have this expectation of what it's going to be, and it really can vary, and it really comes down to just being a conversation and trying to breathe through it.
One of my top line takes on this whole thing is relax. They liked your book enough that they want to talk to you on the phone about it, and be yourself. A big chunk of the call is the agent making sure that you are not an uptight douchebag. That's a big piece of it. Like, can you talk? Can you have a conversation?
Yeah.
Are you like bonkers about something? Like, can they work with you?
But I definitely got that feeling. One of them actually said after like 10 minutes, she's like, okay, you seem like a pretty normal person. So yes, I am offering.
I love that. You seem like a pretty normal
I mean,
person.
those were probably not her exact words, but that was like a
That's
fact. She
awesome.
basically was saying like, okay, you seem like a nice person. So
That is
yeah,
so funny. Yeah.
it is pretty cool. So we should talk about our favorite moments. The first call I did, my favorite moment was the moment she like introduced herself and was like, and yes, I am offering. And that was just an awesome feeling.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah. So my favorite moment I mean, they were all 3 great. But the agent that I signed with, I mean, she was just like, she used all these adjectives right in the beginning. Like she was just entranced. She was enthralled. I wish I could remember exactly what do I have my notebook up here?
By the way, yes, we keep our notes on the call forever.
Oh God, yes.
Office.
She just used like all the adjectives. She was like, I was totally sucked in. I stayed up until 3 a.m. reading this book. And that was like, awesome. And she was the only one. Of my 3 calls, only one of them offered on the phone.
Mhm.
The other two were like, okay, well, let me think about what we've talked about and I will let you know by X time. If that's the situation where they're not offering on the phone, but they're saying, okay, I need to think this over and I'll get back to you, ask them, okay, when should I expect to hear back from you? Because otherwise you will go absolutely crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, I still had to wait a day and a half.
I was gonna say, they both got back to you pretty quickly with,
Pretty quickly. But if I had left those conversations with an I'll get back to you and not know when,
that would have been hard.
I would have just gone nuts. Yeah. And then both of them offered by email after the call, like, the next day or the day after.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I do know one writer who actually she got an email, and in the email it said she was offering. So she did plan a call like a week later, but she knew right off the bat that it was an offer, and that could happen to you. So two things like for me that I took out of the call that were really important to consider were, of the three agents I spoke to, they all had a different amount of revising they wanted to do. One thought I needed almost no revisions, which is it's not a red flag, but it's a little bit of a yellow flag. Very few debut authors have written the perfect book. And I had gotten like enough feedback from agents who had sent me rejections that I felt like probably my book did need some revision. So that concerned me a little bit. One kind of like hinted that it could be like a gigantic revision, but would give me so few details. I felt like I didn't know what I was even getting into. And that type of vagueness, I can understand an agent not wanting you to like take their idea and then sign with someone else, but it was so vague that I felt like I could not make an informed decision.
Yeah.
And then, Kimberly, the agent I signed with, she didn't get like super specific, but I felt like I knew exactly what I was getting into. So
Yeah.
feel okay about asking what they are thinking about revisions wise. It's important that you know that, and it's how much you are changing your book and how you are changing your book, and you need to feel like you're going to be okay with that, because you're entering this relationship with the expectation you're going to do that. And then the other thing is just the feeling you have when you get off the phone, but also the next morning. Like, is this someone that you want to have an ongoing business relationship with? And then, like, last but not least, something to keep in mind is like, we're talking a lot about like, well, do they answer your questions, and do they answer them in the way that like is how what you vibe with and like your overall feeling, and all that's great. But also keep in mind, this is a business decision. So look at their deals on Publishers Marketplace. Are they deals that are representative of where you want to be published so far as like the imprint?
Yeah.
Do they seem to know what they're doing? Are they a newer agent, which is not a bad thing? But if they are a new agent, who are they working with? Who is their mentor going to be? Is there
Or like,
something?
what is their background? A lot
Yeah,
of people seem to move from editorial positions at traditional publishing houses
yeah,
into agenting.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
great. Like, those people
Yeah.
have a ton of experience.
Yeah.
But look at the business aspect of it too, because this is a business relationship. This person is someone that you are probably and hopefully going to be friendly with, but they're not your friend.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
can be
You are
friends
not
with,
interviewing a friend. Yeah.
yeah, but like, this is ultimately a business partner. I feel like we're maybe making this sound super complicated, but in the moment you kind of know. Like, I knew within seconds of getting off the phone, well, before I got off the phone with Kimberly, that that's who I was signing with, given I'd already had 2 phone calls with other agents. So it was easy for me to make that decision. You knew.
I did. After the first two, it was the first two, I was like, this is a hard decision. But then when I talked to Laura, who was the third one I talked to, I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer.
So
You know,
Sarah and I both got off the phone with the agents that we signed with, and both like texted each other, I found my agent, or
like,
something.
this is the one. Yeah. I know, that was great. Although I still, the first agent who offered to me, I still like, she's active on Twitter and I still like see her stuff and I'm like,
She's a very kind person. She would have been a wonderful agent
oh,
to
she
work
would have been an amazing agent. And like there's a little part of me that's like, oh,
with. Yeah,
but
that's okay. And
I don't, I mean, not in a regretful way, but just that she seems so cool.
yeah, if you get multiple offers, you may feel that way. It was hard for me to say no to my first person too,
Yeah.
but she, like, from a business standpoint, was not the better decision, and I also didn't feel as good on the phone with her.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
the agent that I signed with, one of the things that was distinctive about her was that she was enthusiastic. She loved the book. She had some suggestions for editing, but she was like, it's a really hot market. I think I think this is really close to market ready and I want to pitch early. And she seemed like eager to sell it. Like she was looking forward to it,
so I have I think, given who your agent is, because you have like a super agent, I think that's really good. Yeah, I totally think your agent's a super agent. But I
No,
will
you're
say,
right. Coming from a different person, that could be
yeah,
that could
that can
be
be a red flag though. No agent
yeah.
should guarantee they can sell your book. No agent should guarantee what they can sell it for. So,
Oh yeah, no, and she didn't do either of those things.
yeah,
This was more of a like I don't know, just a feeling that I got from her. Like she was
yeah,
psyched, she was confident,
yeah,
she was like
totally.
ready to go.
So I was thinking about another video I watched when I was preparing for my own, and something, this is probably Alexa Dunnigan, she said that she recommends not judging agents purely off of enthusiasm. I think it'll benefit anyone watching this to keep that in mind. Make sure you look at their agency contract. I definitely looked up a couple of videos on YouTube, and I think the Authors Guild also has this,
Mhm.
what should and should not be in an agent contract or an agency agreement.
And these are all elements of transparency.
Yeah.
If,
Yeah, an agent should be pretty transparent. Before you get off the phone, thank them for their offer. So the agents I got offers from all emailed me first because they were like sending me references and stuff. But then I replied, thanking them again, kind of like, you're interviewing one another.
Mhm.
Say thank you. It's totally okay to ask more questions via email, or if you feel like you need a second call, that is not uncommon. So if you just really have more questions or forgot to ask about something, like reach out and they should be happy to talk to you about that.
Right.
How much time did you give agents when you got your offer?
I think I got my offer on a Friday
Uh-huh.
and I made it for the following, actually, maybe it was 10 days. I think I made it for the following Monday, or I got my
Okay.
offer on a Thursday and I made it for the
Yeah.
following Monday.
So I've heard a few people say like 1 to 2 weeks. I would highly recommend at least 10 days, and 2 weeks is totally normal. Some agents will flat out say on Twitter that they expect to be given 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I've also heard that it's really key that they get at least one weekend. And if you're notifying them on a Friday, that weekend right there does not count. Like they already have, weekend plans. So
Right.
giving them at least one full weekend to reading it back
Those are
to you.
the other agents who
Yeah.
have your query.
Yeah. So
when you've got an offer and you say, okay, thank you. I really appreciate the offer. I will make a decision by X date.
yeah.
Right. And then that X date should be 10 days to 2 weeks out to give other agents who have your query letter or your manuscript time to have a crack at you.
So when you do get your offer and you go to email all the other agents, what I would recommend doing is either going to be through Query Manager or email, and just reply to that original email and then change the subject heading to offer of representation received or something like that. And then let them know you've received an offer. You don't have to tell them who, and let them know what your deadline is. I recommend saying the deadline is 1 day before the actual deadline, so that if you get multiple offers, you have plenty of time to think it through and compare.
Yeah. And things can and will go down to the wire.
Yes.
And they did for me. Yeah. I had the call from the agent that I signed with the day
It was like the night before, I think.
was 2 days before. I think I talked to her on Saturday and my
Okay.
decision was on Monday. Although I think I had given her Sunday as a like drop dead date.
I highly recommend, because it will make you feel better and make me feel better. When that time comes and you have made your decision, to email the agent you are accepting the offer from first, and then wait for them to respond. Because like, I can't imagine a situation where anyone would withdraw an offer, but it made me feel better. And then once I got the confirmation, that's when I emailed the other two and said thank you, but no thank you. And
Yeah. And in case you're the kind of person, like probably most of us, who like actually can't even believe this is happening, it's kind of nice to get that reply and, get that, yes, this is really happening. You can say no to those other people now.
I like had this overwhelming fear that like someone was going to change their mind. And I've heard other people say this too, that you're going to randomly get an email and the agent's going to be like, never mind, I'm not.
I know. Under the heading of, I can't believe this is actually really happening. This can't be real. Yeah.
Yeah. And those 2 weeks while you're like waiting to hear back from all the agents who like have your full or, whatever, it's so hard. It like lasted 4 months, I swear.
And then
Okay.
just wait till you're on submission.
Oh, I'm like excited for it and not excited for it.
That's another story entirely.
Yeah, we'll do a show about that soon. We were going to talk about red flags really fast. We've had a couple questions about it. What is one red flag?
Not connecting you with clients.
Yeah,
not letting
I
you
would
talk to
agree.
your clients.
If they expect a super short turnaround time, like they want an answer tomorrow or in 4 days or 5 days, like agents, your manuscript's not going anywhere. They should give you at least a couple weeks. That's normal. Agents should not be asking you for any money for anything.
Yeah.
They should not be telling you that you need to pay this editor who's going to like make your work good enough for them to then represent it. There should not be fees to send out manuscripts. Like 20 years ago, sometimes an author would have to help pay for the literal cost of like a porter if they won't explain a sales record or like a lack of sales record. Again, if they've only been an agent for a year or two, it's normal for it to take time to have a sale.
Yeah.
But if it's been 3 or 4 years and they have no sales listed, or if all of their sales are at smaller presses that you can submit directly to, that is something to have a conversation about, and you should be satisfied with their answer.
Yeah.
I know some agents are very part-time agents and they are like an assistant to another agent. So they spend 75% of their working time working for a bigger agent or a well-established agent. And then they have a small list on the side. So they may only have 3 or 4 sales, but have been listed as an agent for 4 or 5 years. I know like
right.
Writers
And they
House
can
does
explain
this.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's totally normal. That's fine. But that's a lot different than I've been an agent for 5 years and have never sold anything. And then last, industry professionalism and respect. You can look at their social media and that'll tell you a lot. You can Google their name. I've heard if you Google their name and then add scam at the end and something pops up. Writer Beware is a website that has information on agents. And I want to say it's all right. I hope I have that right. If it's wrong, we'll list the right URL below. It's a forum and there are threads on there where you can check up on agents and on agencies.
And there are plenty of agents who do not have much of a social media presence, and that's okay, especially older, more established agents who either aren't interested in it or just don't need it.
Yeah.
And then there are some who are more active on social media, and neither one really indicates that that's a better agent.
Yeah, just because they have a huge social media following or a YouTube channel does not make them the best agent for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a handful of questions. So Kathleen asked, what questions should you as the author be prepared to answer on the phone call? We've talked a little bit about this, being able to talk about what else you're working on.
The thing with that question, the what are you working on next question, is they want to know if you have a market appropriate follow-up,
or just like a writing period.
Yeah, that you're writing something else, but also like if I have pitched them a women's fiction, like a contemporary women's fiction novel, and they love it and they feel like I've got the connections for this, so what I'm starting to realize is that I think when agents talk about what they represent, it's not just what they like, it's also what they've built up connections around, like what editors do they know and what sort of part of the publishing world are they familiar with and connected in. So if I have queried a women's fiction novel and I'm on the call and they ask me what I'm writing next and I say I'm writing a epic space opera, then they're going to be like, well, I really think I could sell this book, but I really don't know what I could do with that book. Most agents, they really want to be your representative for your career. It's not just about this book. And that may be a little flag for them. Like, even though I could sell this book, then I have this author who's writing something totally outside my zone. And if that's you, then that's fine. So you just have to find an agent that's comfortable with that.
I have heard people express like that they want to write in multiple genres and they want an agent that, will do a lot. And that is something to keep in mind when you are querying. But, sometimes if you sign with an agent in your current genre, maybe they have another agent at their agency who, can help them sell something they're not familiar with. Not saying that, you should go into it like thinking that, but keep in mind that when you're answering that question, when you're starting a writing career, for most people, they probably need to stick to one genre, at least for a couple books, and then they might have some more flexibility beyond that. And also if you've, established a relationship with an agent, they may be more willing at that time to branch out a little bit if that is something you're still wanting to do.
Yeah, and the agent that I signed with, she had a really great way of kind of explaining that whole process to me. She was like, you sell your first book and you develop a readership around that book. And if you give that readership a second book, you come out with your second book and they're like, oh, I love this author on her first book. And they read it and it's something like completely different. Then maybe you have some disappointed readers. She's like, once you sort of like
you're branding
gather
yourself.
your readership, when you've got a really solid readership, they'll follow you wherever you want to go. But at first, maybe what you want to do is build that up.
My agent wanted to know what my goal in my career was and like where I wanted to be. So like for her, I told her like, if I could be like the next, and then I listed a couple authors who I really like and respect and feel like my writing is similar to. So it's helpful to have kind of thought about that. I've heard people asked who their favorite authors are, or like their favorite books. Can you think of anything? I mean, they want to know about you as a person. They want to know about you as a writer a little bit. Basically, they want to have a conversation with you and get to know you a little bit. And then Kathleen also asked about the list of questions, which we'll post a couple links down below to the list that we used. And then Elizabeth asks, if an agent contacts you via email, did they let you know they wanted to discuss representation, or were they more vague than that?
The first one was vague for me.
Yeah, for me, nobody like specifically said it. They all said they liked my book and they wanted to talk more about it, discuss it, and maybe hear what else I had written. Like, I think Kimberly technically signaled she was going to offer representation now that I like have read it again after the fact, but the other
explicit,
pretty vague. Taryn asked, what are some red flags? We've talked about that. And then how professional or casual did you play it on the phone call? I was somewhere in between because I wanted to have a real conversation with them and not be like super overly professional. I wore just like a nice shirt, but was definitely wearing gym shorts with that.
Right.
Somewhere in between. And I think it was a little different with each person I talked to. I kind of took it to their level.
So I'm usually somewhat reserved and a little, I sound a little square with people that I don't know well. On the phone. Like I hate making phone calls with people I don't know. So actually for me, I made an effort and stretched out and just really tried to be myself. I think I even swore a couple of times, and
I was afraid to swear on the calls, I'll be honest.
I think Laura went first and broke the ice. No, but I really did kind of make an effort to just be myself.
So I would say like I was myself and I wasn't formal, but I was professional. And I think you can be yourself and also be a professional. And we definitely like talk and joke more now when we do calls than on the offer call. The offer call was very much more of a business tone, also because we had a time limitation. Oh, we didn't even mention that. When you plan a time for your call, plan it when you are not going to be disturbed and when you can have silence, even if that means you take your call like in the car or after your kids go to bed.
I did one of mine at 9:00 at night.
Yeah, and plan for at least an hour. I think my calls took closer to 45 minutes, but I've heard people like going to 90 minutes. Give yourself time so you're not stressed out watching the clock, because one of my calls, I was watching the clock and it definitely affected the call.
When you're scheduling yourself, give yourself a little bit of time before the call to like get in your space, calm down. I got like all set up with my earbuds plugged in because I didn't want to be holding the phone and everything. I even tested it to make sure everything was going to work. And all three of mine were dead on time.
Okay, we had a couple more questions. Also, I just want to say, I know that we've gotten a lot of questions we haven't answered. We're trying to kind of hit them as we hit those topics. So please know that we are getting to them. And if there's anything you really want to know, feel free to direct message us on Twitter or post it on Moms Writers Club. This is kind of related. Shay asked, do you leave any space literally or emotionally for changes that publishers or agents might want before you are signed? And I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I just wrote the best book I could, knowing that more than likely revisions would certainly happen because they basically happen for every manuscript.
Is that sort of asking, like, do you sort of prepare ahead of time for the fact that your book may change?
It might be.
When you get represented, is that kind of what she means?
I think so. And I think that that's a fair assumption. I assume so.
Yeah. I mean, I think I did the same. I think I wrote the best book that I could, and I was prepared for the fact that editors and or agents might want changes or revisions or additions. I think it's just, if you're kind of prepared for that fact, then when you get to actually talking with an individual about specific things, then you can make decisions. Is this person asking too much? Is this just a change I don't want to make? Or what?
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us and learning a little bit more about the call. I hope that this has helped. Feel free to drop down below any questions you have, or you can reach us on Twitter.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for joining us. Good luck with your calls when they happen.
Yep, you can find us every other Wednesday night doing the Moms Writers Club chat on Twitter. If you find me at Author Just Payne on Twitter, my pinned post is when our next chat is, and we would love to have you join us.
All right.
Bye-bye.